Good afternoon, and thank you both for meeting with me today. As part of my principal certification program, I'm leading a walkthrough forum committee to review classrooms walkthrough practices and develop a new walkthrough forum that better meets the needs of our campus. The purpose of today's meeting is to discuss what information is most important to collect during walkthroughs, review several walkthrough forms, examine campus needs, and collaborate to create a new one-page walkthrough form that can be used consistently across the campus. Our goal is to create a form that is simple, meaningful, and focused on student learning. Before we begin, I would like to review today's agenda. We will start discussing the purpose of walkthrough and how they can be used to improve instruction across the campus. Second, we will review campus needs and discuss areas that should be prioritized on the walkthrough form. Third, we'll review our current campus walkthrough form along with three additional forms collected from from other districts and programs. We'll discuss strengths and weaknesses of each form and determine which components would be most useful for our campus. Fourth, we will discuss the specific categories that should be included on our new walkthroughs forms. Fifth, we will work together to finalize the components of the form and ensure that it's aligned with our campus goals and instructional priorities. And finally, we'll review next steps and discuss how the forms will be used during a classroom walkthrough and teacher feedback conferences. Does anyone have any questions about the agenda before we begin?
No questions. The agenda is clear and it provides a good structure for our discussion. I'm really interested in discussing how walkthrough data can be used to support professional development.
No, I don't have any questions either. I think reviewing multiple walkthrough forms will be helpful because it'll allow us to identify what information is most useful for teachers and administrators.
Thank you. I appreciate your willingness to participate in this process. Let's begin by discussing the purpose of walkthroughs and how they can support teaching and learning across the campus. When people hear the word walkthrough, they often think about evaluation. However, walkthroughs can serve many purposes. What do you think is primary purpose of classroom walkthroughs?
I think the primary purpose is to gather information about teaching and learning. Walkthroughs allow administrators to see what's happening in classrooms on a regular basis rather than relying only on formal observations.
Yeah, from a teacher perspective, walkthroughs are most beneficial when they are used to support growth. Teachers appreciate feedback that helps improve instruction rather than feedback that feels evaluative.
I agree. One thing I learned from the readings is that walkthroughs data can also be aggregated across classrooms to identify school-wide trends.
Absolutely. If walkthrough data shows that students struggle with academic discourse or engagement across multiple classrooms, those areas can become a focus for professional development.
Exactly. Walkthroughs can help identify both strengths and areas for growth across the campus. So now we're going to review the campus needs and data. Based on our campus goals and students' achievements data, what instructional areas should we be reflecting in our walkthrough forms?
Student engagement should be one of the top priorities. If students are not engaged, then learning is unlikely to happen.
Yeah, and I would also include student discourse. We want students using or discussing, their learning and explaining their thinking and using academic vocabulary.
What about checking for understanding?
Oh, definitely. Teachers should be actively monitoring the learning throughout the lesson and adjusting their instruction when needed.
Yeah. And differentiation should be included because we have students with a wide variety of learning needs.
Those are all important areas that are aligned with our campus goals. Now we're going to review existing walkthroughs forms. Before creating our new walkthrough form, I would like to discuss the four forms we review, including our campus forms and three outside forms. As you look through them, what stood out to you?
The first walkthrough form was very checklist oriented. I liked that it focused on instructional practices like student engagement, questioning techniques, check for understanding, gradual release, classroom culture, and classroom organization. The checklist format made it easy to quickly identify trends across the classroom and collect consistent data. I also appreciated that the indicators were observable and measurable, which helps improve reliability among different observers.
I agree. I also like that the form focused on specific observable behaviors rather than general impressions. It made it easy to collect data efficiently during a walkthrough and would allow administrators to identify patterns across grade levels and content areas. The form also aligned well with many of the instructional practices we're currently emphasizing on our campus.
One thing I noticed was that it was very detailed. While it provides useful information, it may be difficult to complete every section during a short classroom visit. From a teacher's perspective, I think too many indicators could make it difficult to determine which areas are most important. A more streamlined version would help ensure that the feedback remains focused and manageable.
That is a great point. We want a form that provides meaningful information without becoming overwhelming for either the observer or the teacher. Let's talk about the second form.
To me, the second form, the peer observation form, was much more reflective. Instead of relying primarily on checklists, it encouraged the observer to document what was occurring during the lesson, identify strengths, analyze student engagement, and give suggestions for improvement. I liked how the form promoted professional dialogue and reflection rather than simply recording what was observed.
What I liked from this form was that it felt supportive and growth oriented. The reflection questions encouraged meaningful conversations about instructional practices and student learning. It would be especially useful for coaching cycles, peer observations, and professional learning communities.
I agree. I think including a strength section and a next step section would be valuable in our final form because it supports teacher growth and creates opportunities for constructive feedback. Now let's discuss the third form.
The classroom observation form focused on broader categories like organization, report, teaching methods, classroom management, subject matter knowledge, sensitivity, and assistance to students. I appreciated that it examined both instructional practices and the overall learning environment. The emphasis on teacher-student relationships and classroom culture aligns with what we know about effective schools.
I especially like the section on rapport and sensitivity because positive relationships are essential for student success. Students are most likely to engage in learning when they feel respected, supported, and valued in the classroom.
Yeah, what stood out to me was the classroom management section. Effective classroom management creates the foundation for learning and allows instructional time to be used efficiently. I also appreciated the focus on teacher support and responsiveness to student needs because those elements are important for creating an inclusive learning environment.
As we review all four forms, I noticed several common themes. Although each form was organized differently, they consistently emphasize student engagement, effective instructional practices, classroom environments, and evidence of learning.
I agree. Regardless of the format, all the forms focus on improving teaching and learning. The strongest forms balanced instructional look-fors with opportunities for reflection and feedback.
Yeah, and I also noticed that each form kept students at the center of the observation process, whether the focus was engagement, discourse, differentiation, or classroom culture. The ultimate goal was to determine whether students were actively learning and making progress toward the lesson objective.
So, based on our discussion, I think our walkthrough form should include learning objectives, student engagement, academic discourse, instructional practices, check for understandings, differentiation, classroom environments, and evidence of student learning. We should also include strength and next steps to support teachers' growth.
I agree. That combines the strongest components from all the four forms while keeping the form concise enough to be used consistently during routine walkthroughs. It will also provide meaningful data that can inform instructional decisions and professional development planning.
Yeah, I agree as well. The form is focused, practical, centered on student learning. It will provide valuable feedback to teachers while also helping administrators identify campus-wide strengths and areas of growth.
So let's discuss the specific categories we want to include in our final walkthrough as we develop our new walkthrough form. First, should learning objectives be included?
Absolutely. The learning objectives should be clearly posted, aligned to the lesson, and referenced throughout the instruction. During a walkthrough, we should be able to determine whether the teacher and students understand the purpose of the lesson and how it connects to the learning target.
Yeah, I agree with that. Students should be able to explain what they're learning and why it is important. Even our youngest learners should have a clear understanding of the lesson goal in a student-friendly language.
Next, student engagement.
Student engagement is critical because it provides evidence that students are actively involved in the learning process. We should look for students participating in discussions, collaborating with their peers, responding to questions that are asked, and completing meaningful learning tasks rather than simply being compliant.
Yeah, I think engagement should also reflect student ownership of learning. Students should be thinking, talking, writing, and solving problems rather than relying solely on the teacher. Engagement often gives us a good indication of whether learning is actually taking place.
So what about academic discourse?
Academic discourse should be included because it allows students to process and deepen their understanding. We should look for opportunities where students explain their thinking, justify their responses, ask questions, and engage in meaningful conversations related to the content.
Yeah, as a classroom teacher, I think it's important to capture whether students are using academic vocabulary and complete responses. Structured conversations, partner discussions, and collaborative learning activities are all indicators of strong discourse.
So let's discuss check for understandings.
This is one of the most important components of effective instruction. Teachers should regularly monitor student learning through questioning, observations, student responses, and formative assessments. The walkthrough form should capture whether teachers are using the information they gathered to adjust their instruction.
Yeah, I agree. We should look for evidence that teachers are identifying misconceptions and providing immediate feedback. Checks for understanding help ensure that students are learning before moving on to the next concept.
So next is differentiation.
Differentiation is essential because students learn at different rates and have varying needs. The form should allow observers to note accommodations, scaffolding, flexible grouping, intervention supports, and enrichment opportunities.
And I would include evidence that tasks are accessible to all learners. During a walkthrough, we should be able to see supports for multilingual learners, students receiving special education services, and students who need additional challenges.
I agree. How about classroom environment?
To me, a positive classroom environment creates the conditions necessary for learning. We should look for respectful interactions, clear expectations set, established routines, and a culture where students feel safe taking academic risks.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. Students learn best when they feel supported and valued. The walkthrough form should capture evidence of positive relationships between teachers and students, as well as strong classroom management practices.
Should we include evidence of student learning?
Oh, definitely. Ultimately, the walkthrough should focus on student outcomes. Observers should be able to identify evidence that students are progressing toward the learning objective through their work, their responses, and how they participate.
Yeah, I think this section helps keep the focus on the students rather than just teacher actions. It allows observers to document what students know, understand, and are able to do during the lesson.
And should we include a section for strengths and next steps?
Yes, I think highlighting strengths help reinforce effective instructional practices, while next steps provide opportunities for growth. The balance helps make feedback more supportive and meaningful.
I agree. Teachers are more receptive to feedback when their strengths are acknowledged and when suggestions are specific, actionable, and connected to student learning.
Excellent feedback. Based on our discussion, I believe these categories will provide meaningful information while keeping the form concise enough for a frequent classroom walkthrough. So now we can review the final walkthrough based on what we discussed. Based on our discussion, the new walkthrough form will include learning objective, student engagement, academic discourse, checking for understanding, differentiation, classroom environment, evidence of student learning, glow strength, growth next steps, and follow-up actions. Does everyone agree with these categories?
Yes, I think that all aligns with our instructional priorities and provide meaningful data.
I agree. The form is simple, focused, and centered on student learning.
So now closing and next steps. Thank you both for your participation and valuable feedback today. Your insights help ensure that our walkthrough form is focused on what matters most, supporting high quality instruction and improving student learning. Based on our discussions, I will finalize the one-page walkthrough form and share it with both of you for a final review. Once revisions are completed, the form will be piloted during classroom walkthroughs over the next several weeks. After the pilot period, we will gather feedback from teachers and administrators regarding the usability and effectiveness of the form. We will analyze the data collected to determine whether the form provides meaningful information about instructional practices and student learning. The walkthrough data will also help identify campus-wide strengths and areas for growth, which can inform future professional development opportunities and instructional support. Our next committee meeting will focus on reviewing pilot feedback, discussing any necessary revisions, and determining recommendations for campus-wide implementation. I appreciate your collaboration, professionalism, and commitment to continuous improvements. Together, we have created a tool that will support teachers' growth, strengthen instructional practices, and ultimately improve outcomes for our students. Thank you again for your time and contributions today. This concludes our meeting.
Thank you for leading the process. I'm excited to see the final walkthrough form and how it can be used to gather meaningful instructional data. I do believe the categories we selected will provide valuable insight into student engagement, academic discourse, and instructional practices across all classrooms. The information collected through walkthroughs can help us identify campus-wide trends and guide future professional development opportunities. I look forward to supporting teachers as we implement the form and use the data to strengthen instruction and improve student outcomes.
Yeah, thank you for including teacher voice in this process. I appreciate that the walkthrough form is focused on supporting growth rather than simply evaluating instruction. The categories we selected reflect what is most important in the classroom and keep the focus on student learning. I especially like the inclusion of strengths, next steps, evidence of student learning, because those components will make feedback more meaningful and actionable. I look forward to using the form and providing feedback as we pilot it to ensure it remains practical and beneficial for both teachers and administrators.
Thank you so much, ladies.
Thank you.